this is Nina Milligan, and I'm at Blakely Hall. Well, not really at Blakely Hall, but we do the talk show at Blakely Hall, so I thought I'd do a little backdrop that kind of looked like Blakely Hall. And today I have with me Dru Ernst from Logan neighborhood, the Logan Park neighborhood in Issaquah Highlands, and he is the brewmaster and owner of Dru Bru at Snoqualmie Pass. Thanks for coming and joining me here at Blakely Hall, Dru.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm actually here at my house in the Logan neighborhood, or in the Issaquah Highlands Logan neighborhood, and excited to be part of this interview.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. We've had some difficult times lately with the coronavirus and the stay-at-home order, and people a little stir-crazy, and I heard that they might be drinking more than normal, but I wanted to know whether they were really enjoying their beer, and I thought I'd have an expert in so you could teach us how to enjoy our beer during this stay-at-home order. How does that sound?
That sounds like a plan. Any reprieve I can provide to everybody, I'm happy to do so.
Great, that's great. We're going to taste some beers later, but what I thought we might do first is get some information from you about how to taste beer and what sort of things you look for in a beer, and what steps a person would take if they were really trying to get the most out of the flavor in a beer.
No problem. Yeah, I think beer tasting is a critical importance for me as a brewmaster, or for anybody who works in the brewing industry. It's still the #1 form of quality control for breweries, small and large. Flavor and the way that it is tasted can't be done well by a computer, so it needs to be done by people. So you have
too
to
bad.
It's usually the one thing that most beer fans ask if they can do for a brewery too. Like, can I be your taster? And yes, you can be our taster, but if you want to be a professional taster, you have to really take it seriously, because it is something that's has its own set of challenges, and you have to have kind of your own repertoire of vocabulary and skills to be an effective beer taster.
All right, so what sort of things, can you give us a quick, something that people could remember? Quick steps. How do you taste a beer?
Of course. So I kind of want to start with a little bit of an overview. And this is really a sensory experience. So set yourself up for success to do this. So try to do your tastings in a non-distracting environment. So distractions can be anything like noise or smells or lights. So try to be in somewhat of a relaxing, sterile environment, free of smells. And that's really going to help with the tasting more than anything else. Also, treat your palate nice. So clean your palate before you're tasting by using, some oyster crackers or a saltine. Also, I would avoid eating spicy foods or smoking a cigar before doing beer tasting, as that would really impair your ability to perceive flavors. And also do this with people. It's really important to do this with other people and to talk about it. But the key to that is to make sure you don't talk about it while tasting, but after you've tasted. So write your thoughts down. Don't allow your flavors to change other people's mind about what they're tasting. So make sure the people you're doing this with are writing things down, so that you guys can compare notes afterward, and they don't say, "Oh, I'm gonna write that because this person said that." So those are
that would be cheating.
That would be cheating, yeah. And you'd be surprised at how much that persuasion really influences what people would say about what they're tasting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what kind of elements are in a beer that I'm looking for? And I'm a wine taster, so I'm looking for clarity and color and blah, blah. What do you look for in a beer?
It's somewhat similar to wine. Obviously, the flavors will be different, but what you're looking for are very similar. So really the first thing I always look at is appearance. So you're kind of pouring the beer into a glass. What color is it? What's the head look like? How carbonated does it look? Those are all important things to judge. And, the descriptions you would say, is this brilliantly clear? Is it hazy? Is it somewhat translucent? Is it dark? Those are all really good descriptions. The next and probably most important part of tasting is aroma. So smell beer, use your nose. Most flavors that we perceive actually come from our sense of smell. Our sense of taste is really only can judge a few things, whereas the combination of aroma and taste really what develops full flavors. So use your nose, use it well. There's a couple different techniques that you can use. Some of them have to do with when you pour the beer in a glass, stick your nose in the glass and actually try to get that smell. They call that the close sniff. You can also do it from a little bit farther away, and you can perceive different flavors that way. Or if you really want to get a strong sense of aroma, you can even cover and swirl a little bit, and that'll release a whole bunch of the flavors from the beer, and then quickly smell that way. And that can really help release the flavors from the beer that you're tasting.
Okay, excellent. And then when it gets into your mouth, do you keep it in there and try to taste everything? What sort of flavors would a person perceive?
Yeah, so flavor is the kind of the final thing that I would say. And after you get the sense of appearance and a sense of aroma, put the beer in your mouth. You don't need to necessarily swish it around, but let it linger in your mouth for a little bit of time. Swallow it. Try to exhale afterward through your nose. That's going to be the best way to perceive those flavors. You'll find that there's going to be different flavors going down than there are coming back out as you exhale. And it's important to try to do that through the nose so you can pick up all those smell receptors on the way out. And really you're looking for the combination of all of those things. The aroma, the mouthfeel. So is this a thick, heavy, viscous beer, or is it light and crisp? And then you're going to be able to perceive those flavors as you're enjoying the taste, or as it's in your mouth and you're exhaling after you've drank it.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that sounds really good. It makes me want to have some beer. Now, we did plan to have a beer tasting, but I know that I have to get set up now because you told me to take notes. So give me a moment. Let's come back with our beer, and we will do a beer tasting together and practice those things, okay?
That sounds great.
Yeah, thank you. Great. So now that I'm ready for this beer tasting, I have my beer poured here, and I have my note paper, and I'm ready to do it. Dru, take me through these 3 beers from Dru Bru, which is up in Snoqualmie Pass. I've enjoyed being in your place many times, and I enjoy getting your beer down at Bevmo, I think. Do I get it at Bevmo?
Yes, it is available at the Bevmo in Issaquah Highlands. You can also find it at the Fred Meyer and QFCs around Issaquah as well.
Excellent, excellent, good. Okay, well, I've got these 3 beers that you have. Lead me through how to taste these.
Yes, so the first beer that we are going to start with is the Dru Bru Kolsch. So this is coming in a 12-ounce can. This is our flagship beer, so just crack it open, and with pouring it, I have these little 5-ounce tasters. You usually want about 2 to 3 ounces of beer to appropriately taste it. I don't like to waste any beer, so I'll probably drink the rest of this after this is over, but for the purposes of tasting, we'll pour it in a glass. I'd always recommend tasting the beer out of a glass. If you really want to capture the majority of your flavor in the beer, you should pour it in a glass, let it breathe, let the aroma really release. One of the other tricks to tasting as much as you can is to actually let the beer warm up a little. So it's better to taste the beer probably around 45 degrees, maybe even 50 degrees. You don't have to drink it like that as you're just enjoying a beer normally, but if you really want to perceive flavors, the warmth is actually an advantage.
Okay.
So pour it kind of at a 45-degree angle. You don't want to pour it really, really gently. You do want to develop some foam. Foam is really important for releasing the aromas. And so that's a kind of a solid pour where you have, a nice little layering of foam on the top. And
That's
so now
good.
to start tasting this Kolsch, and with beer tasting in general, it's all about practice. So the more that you do this, the more you talk about the flavors you're perceiving, you're building a vocabulary, and you'll be able to reference that as you taste other beers. So first thing we're going to do, like we talked about, is looking at the appearance of this beer. So you can kind of see that it is a golden colored beer. It's very light straw. I would not describe it as perfectly clear. It's probably more of a translucent. This would also change depending on how the beer was stored, or also the amount of yeast that could be in the beer. So some beers are very clear, some beers are very cloudy, and there's not necessarily anything wrong about any of that. It's just the way that the beer is presented. So once you've kind of written down those ideas of what you're seeing, gold color, nice white foam head, you're going to transition to the aroma stage. So now you're going to kind of smell the beer. What are you going to get off of that? Try to think about how you relate that smell to other things that you've experienced. Is it smell like bread? Maybe that's what I smell with Kolsch, is very much like bread. Also, you might get a little bit of kind of a grainy, malty character to it. Maybe like flour could be something that you're getting.
Do I smell something that's kind of fruity?
Yes, like you can definitely, in this beer, I get a hint of green apple. That's something that I would smell in this beer. Um, and you might even get a little bit of honey as an aroma that would come through as well. And those are all from the malt ingredients that are in the beer. This beer does have hops, but very little, so it's not going to come across as bitter. So remember, when we're doing this, we're writing all this down. We're not talking about it out loud, so we're not influencing the others that we might be tasting with. So once we're satisfied with the aromas, we feel like we've captured what we can. Remember, you can try these different techniques, the close sniff, the long sniff. You might even try the cover and swirl. And that's really going to help you kind of get the bouquet of different flavors that are coming out of it.
Yes.
So now we're going to try to taste this beer and take a sip. Get a good amount in your mouth on the first try and try to let it linger in your mouth for a couple seconds before swallowing. And remember to exhale out of your nose. Allow all those smell receptors to get the aroma that's coming out of the beer after it's gone down. So what I'm seeing with this is it's got this nice little sweetness to it. A lot of those aromas that we perceived are also coming through in the flavor. Also, describing some mouthfeel at this point is important. So this is a pretty dry or crisp beer. It's not a heavy, thick beer. So I would say that the mouthfeel is on the light side rather than on the heavy side. I definitely taste that honey a little bit more than I smell it as I drink this beer, as well as some of that kind of green apple-y flavor, especially as I exhale. So some of those aromas are really coming through as I drink the beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not that it's sweet, but these distinct memories of these flavors. One thing that I noticed was, and maybe I'm wrong, but you said yeast earlier, but I was thinking particularly white bread.
Yes.
There's a clean flavor in white bread that I was noticing in this that I liked.
Definitely, yeah, and I think that this beer, clean, is a good way of describing that kind of perception of flavor. There's not a lot of like conflicting flavors. It's kind of very crisp and straightforward in its presentation.
Great. Okay, can we move on to the next one?
Of course. All right, we ready?
Yes. I'm so glad that this interview is going to go to the end of our day so I can enjoy drinking these beers after work.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, the next one. What's the next one?
So the next beer we're going to taste is our Hop Session. Also comes in a 12-ounce can. This is kind of our flagship IPA. So you probably have heard the term IPA before. It stands for India Pale Ale. The short version of the history of the India Pale Ale is that this beer was kind of created when England was the sovereign country over India, and they were actually making beer and shipping it back and forth to India, and to preserve it, they were packing the barrels full of hops, and that was a preservative. And so what was happening in India is the British people who wanted to drink beer in India were getting beer over there that was very hoppy because it was traveling on the boats full of hops. So as they came back to England, they started saying, where's my India beer? I liked the beer that I was having over there. So they kind of birthed this new style called the India Pale Ale. And that's kind of where this started from. Obviously, as time has gone on, this style has become wildly popular and has changed and is now really a Northwest product, because most of the hops in the entire country are grown right here in Washington State. It's the biggest hop growing region in the entire world is here in Washington State. So
wow.
Yes. So that was a little transition there, but now we'll crack this beer open. This is a lighter style IPA. Some of them can be pretty strong in alcohol. This one's only about 5%. So we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to crack it open and pour it into a glass and let it breathe a little bit. Again, it's always better to allow this beer or any beer to warm up just a little so that you can perceive those flavors. And that's obviously a preference thing when you're just drinking beer casually, but for flavor tastings, it's best to allow them to warm up. So remember, the first thing, we're looking at it and we're looking at the color. We're looking at the appearance of the beer. So this one is a little bit darker in color than the previous Kolsch. I would describe this maybe as like a light copper color. not, it's not a dark beer, but it's definitely not as golden or straw colored as the previous one. It has a very strong kind of off-white head. This beer I poured with quite a bit of foam on it. The more foam you get, the more you're going to get aromatic release. You're going to be able to smell and perceive more and more flavor. So foam is a good thing with beer. It's one of the things that really distinguishes itself from something like wine, because there's a textural element to that as well when you're drinking.
Okay.
So, if you go to a microbrewery, you might find that the beers that they're pouring off tap have more head than the ones that you maybe would get like a Coors or Bud Light, and that's because that's on purpose. They want those beers to have that foam because it enhances the experience. So,
okay.
So as you're smelling this one, I tend to get a lot more fruity character out of this beer. Some citrus aromas, maybe some tropical fruit aromas as well.
Yeah.
It's a very strong kind of bouquet of citrus, I would describe with this beer. So the carbonation level is also pretty carbonated. You can see actively bubbles rising in the beer, and that head is lasting and kind of staying there for a while, which is also something to kind of note as you're taking your notes while tasting the beer. So now we'll go into the clarity of it, which this one's clearer than the last. So this one probably is almost brilliantly clear. If you can see perfectly through, see your finger on the other side. That's very little haze that's in this beer at all.
Okay, ready.
All right, so now we're going to do some aroma. So we're going to smell. I think we may have already done a little bit of the aroma, but
yeah, we did. Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, and then maybe the cover and sniff. So now we'll try some tasting.
Okay.
So one of the fruits that I really get with this beer is grapefruit. Definitely a flavor that I perceive strongly. There's, in my mind, I also perceive some tropical mango-y flavor as well in this beer. That's definitely not as at the forefront as the grapefruit. There's a little bit of background kind of grainy maltiness, but definitely those citrus flavors are in the forefront, the first thing that I'm tasting for sure. From a mouthfeel perspective, I'm also perceiving this as a light mouthfeel flavor or feeling beer in my mouth. It's definitely not viscous at all. So it kind of cleanses off the palate quickly. Some of those heavier beers, you'll find them to kind of stick a little bit more. So they'll like kind of coat the tongue longer than a beer that's lighter. As the carbonation plays a big effect of that as well. So the more carbonated the beer, the faster it will kind of wick away from your tongue.
Now, you talked about the India Pale Ale and the hops, and how would I be perceiving the hops?
So in this beer, the vast majority of the flavor that you're getting are from the hops. And hops, most people kind of think about hops as, they add bitterness to the beer. And that's what they do. That's their original purpose, was to kind of balance the sweetness of beer out with a bittering agent. That has really changed or morphed over the course of the last 10, 15 years with craft brewing. Now there are tons of flavors that come from hops, and there are these characteristics that brewers call aroma characteristics from hops. So they're not just adding the hops to provide that bitterness, they're also adding them later in the beer making process, or even after the beer is made during fermentation. That's called dry hopping, and they're adding a ton of oil content and flavor. So that grapefruit, that mango, if you smell any of that grassiness, those are all flavors that are being contributed by the hops themselves. This beer is kind of built to showcase the hop flavors. So the malt characters of the beer are very simple and subdued, just kind of allowing a blank canvas for the hop flavors to shine through.
Excellent. Well, I love it. It's delicious. So are we ready to move on to the next one? I think you just might have provided a transition in that description.
Of course. All right. That one's good. I want to drink more. All right. So the final beer we're tasting today is another Dru Bru. This one is called the Brewski Patrol. So this is kind of a special beer for Dru Bru. We're up at the ski resort at Snoqualmie Pass. We love our mountain community up there, and we love what the ski patrollers do for the mountain community. So this is a beer kind of paying homage to the ski patrollers. We actually donate some of the proceeds of this beer back to the Ski Patrol Association up there, which is mostly volunteer based. So anything that they get is really huge for them, because they do everything they do basically for their love of the mountains and their love of providing that for people. So we want to do our part to give back to them. So that's what this beer is all about. We're going to crack it open and give it a try.
Yeah.
All right, so same idea here, pouring it in the glass. The faster and more aggressively that you pour, the more the head will foam up quite a bit. You want to get some agitation to allow that foam, but too much agitation will decarbonate the beer. So you don't want to be, really aggressively dumping it, because you'll get this huge head, which will decarbonate too much and kind of take away from that wicking experience that carbonation can allow while you're tasting the beer. So now we're going to go through the same process again. So looking at the appearance, this beer obviously is very different in color than the last two that we're talking about. I am seeing kind of like a russet reddish brown color, especially what you'll notice with darker beers is that the diameter of the glass that you're drinking in will change the color significantly. So my glass is a little small 5-ounce glass. I'm holding it up in the light, and it looks almost red. I know that if I were to have a much thicker glass, like a regular pint glass, this would probably look closer to black. And that's just because there's just that much more liquid for the light to get through, and it filters it that much more. And you think of a dark beer, as not clear, but if you really look at this one, it's totally clear. You can see completely through it. So it's something that changes your perception on dark beer. This Brewski Patrol will do that a lot, because as we'll taste through it, you'll see there's a lot of differences between this dark beer than many others. So never judge a book by a cover, and never judge a beer by the way it looks in a glass either. So still see that carbonation. This foam is more tan, I would describe. So write that down if you're taking notes as you're tasting. We're going to do some smelling on this one as well. So the close sniff. Maybe that cover sniff as well. I'm really getting a lot of kind of toast character.
Yeah.
Maybe some nuttiness as well. I do perceive maybe some hazelnut, like a faint amount of chocolate as well in there. But really that toast is what I'm getting as the first aroma on this one. There's definitely some malty sweetness, maybe some caramel as well as I smell it. All right, now we're going to transition into tasting. So first thing that I notice is that this beer is also light in its viscosity. It is not a heavy, thick beer. Most people think about dark beers as being heavy and thick. And so this one's a little different because it's actually light, but still very dark in color and its flavors. I kind of get this Nutella toast characteristic with this one, kind of buttering your toast with Nutella. It has a nice, I wouldn't call it a sweet beer, but there is a hint of chocolate in it, in my mind. Maybe a little bit of that nuttiness coming back in the flavor again as well. So what are you perceiving in the flavors of this?
Yeah, I agree about what you said about chocolate, not sweet chocolate, but more in the really dark chocolates that you feel like you're getting something of the chocolate bean, maybe a little coffee side to that. And then the light texture of this, not as carbonated as the other two in my glass here, but so light, not like a, what would you call this beer? What class of beer is this?
So of all the three beers that we have drank today, this is the only one that's a lager.
It's a lager, but it's dark in color. That's so confusing.
Yes, and so that's another kind of big misconception about beer, is that ales are light and ales are dark and lagers are light. That's not true at all. It really only has to do with the type of yeast that you use. That's what distinguishes a lager from an ale. So this is a lager. What this style of beer is it's a German style beer called a Munich Dunkel.
Oh yeah.
So a Dunkel just means dark in Germany. So if you were to go anywhere in Bavaria and you asked for a Dunkel, you'd get a beer somewhat like this, and that's basically a dark lager is what it is.
Well, that was a great tasting, Dru. Thank you so much. I loved all those beers.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and it's been kind of lonely. We're stuck at home. The coronavirus and the Washington State stay-at-home order has us all stuck at home. That's why we at Highlands Council wanted to bring something to people into their homes that they can do at home. And normally I'd have this talk show. I'd have you come in to Blakely Hall, where I'm pretending I am right now, but I'm really at my house, and have a talk. But you're at home, and you live here with your family. You've lived here for a while, haven't you, Dru?
Yes, we've lived in Issaquah for about 5 years and have moved up into the Highlands about 2.5 years ago.
Excellent. Do you have kids in school or?
Yes, so I here with my wife and my 2 kids. One is brand new. He's about 5 months old.
Whoa.
So he is not quite in school yet. He's just figuring out how to roll over. He just did that a couple of days ago for the first time.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, he is luckily someone who can bring a lot of happiness and smiles to our household every day. He's a very happy baby, which we're very thankful for during this time. And so whenever I'm feeling, like I need a good pick me up, I just go hang out with him, and he gives me a smile and makes me feel good. So, and we also have a 7-year-old daughter, and she is a first grader at Grand Ridge Elementary.
Excellent.
He is experiencing education at home right now with me and my wife, trying to do our best to provide her education. We're also, getting help by the school. They're doing their best to, try to figure out how to keep kids engaged during this interesting and difficult time. So it's been a fun experience. We try to do as much as we can at home to keep it lively. Easter was just happening, so we did an Easter egg hunt in the house. We're doing some things in our little front yard or backyard to try to get a little bit of exercise, but haven't been able to go out to too much other than on some small walks around the neighborhood. So
yeah, with the kids. And your business, when did you and why did you start Dru Bru, and why are you up at Snoqualmie Pass?
So Dru Bru's been around for a little over 5 years now. We opened in right around Christmas in 2014. We started Dru Bru because we love beer. We love sharing beer with people. We put it up at Snoqualmie Pass because we also love the outdoors. And we make products at Dru Bru that are very approachable, easier drinking, lower alcohol craft beer. And we paired that with a wonderful setting, being at the foot of the ski resort up there in the winter, so people can have a great experience after they're skiing or before. We also we allow kids in our facility as well. We make our own root beer up there, so it's a very family-friendly environment and encourage families to come up. We even have games and toys for kids to do once we're able to do this all over again. And in the summer, it's a great place as well for hiking and just kind of experiencing being in nature. And that's why we're up there.
And I understand that you're closed right now, and that was a difficult decision to make, to actually close. Some brew pubs are open for delivery or for pickup, for like growler pickup. And then tell me a little bit about, are you closed, and then how are you going to reopen?
We decided we operated for about a week after the stay at home kind of shutdown order as a beer to go facility. And what we were experiencing was something that there were just so many people who were wanting to go up into the mountains, use that area kind of as a place to recreate. I don't think people had quite grasped the severity of the situation quite yet. So we decided to close permanently for this. No to-go beer, really as a way to kind of not feel like we were encouraging more people to kind of go recreate up in the mountains and really stay at home. And it's, it was a very difficult decision. Obviously, every small business out there, especially retail-focused businesses, are just being, severely impacted by all of this. So making a decision that would further make our the challenge of this shutdown more impactful was difficult, but we felt like it was very important to kind of protect the people of Snoqualmie Pass, the people who live up there. Even the ski patrol, the fire and rescue people were really trying to not encourage people to go up and skin and kind of go into the wilderness, because they might get hurt as well and kind of inundate the hospitals as well. And that's something that obviously they're being fully occupied by this virus right now and don't want to add any more to their plate. So
yeah. And when you reopen, how will we know you're open, and might you open as a to-go place first, or how would that work?
Yeah, what we've done over the last 2 weeks is that we have started allowing people, especially locals, to make a reservation for a pickup. So we don't have hours, we're not open to the public, but we do have an online system that you can go to and basically schedule a time to pick up to-go beer. And we are not actively announcing this. It is on our website now, but we haven't put it on any of our social media channels. So people who are in the area or are really wanting to get the beer, isolate themselves by driving up and then going home, like they can make an appointment and get the beer from us.
Okay.
And then we're obviously, I think like most other people, very much looking forward to the day that this is a little bit more under control, and that we can think about venturing out and going to places like Dru Bru or any of the other awesome bars and restaurants here in the Highlands. Once that happens, we'll be shouting it from the rooftops, getting on Instagram and Facebook and our website, telling everybody to enjoy themselves and have a good time responsibly. I think the biggest question that we have and most people have is, what is life going to be like after the stay-at-home order? And we don't know, and that's going to be a play it as it comes, and always try to do the most responsible thing for the public. So
right. And I heard the governor's recent press conference. Doesn't sound like we're going to be out of the stay-at-home until May, and so we still have some time. And I hope that we'll hear you shouting from your back porch there when you're going to open. Just yell out there, and everybody in the garden and Bark Park will hear you. Yeah. And they'll all come on up to your place at the pass, or you could even shout when a new delivery is made down at Bevmo if you want. Some people will probably just go down there.
Yeah.
And then I hope we can have you back in the future, Dru. I as a beer lover myself, I find it difficult sometimes to follow all the trends and to learn all the details, even how to read one of those big board menus that are in a brew pub, how to read about alcohol levels and hop and all that kind of stuff. And so I'd like to have you in some other time, maybe while we're still stuck at home, and we can learn a little bit more. So I hope we can have you back soon.
I'd love to do it. And I think that's something that we pride ourselves in at Dru Bru, is being very approachable with beer. And it is, the whole world of beer has gotten so big and can be very confusing. And I'm here to provide guidance if people would like it.
That's great. Thank you, Dru, so much for coming. And again, I'm Nina Milligan with Highlands Council. I work at Blakely Hall. It looks like I'm there right now, but really I'm working from home because the hall is closed during the stay-at-home order. And we look forward to having all the community engaged again. We'll have some things to do in the summer. And in the meantime, we'll just have people following us at the official Issaquah Highlands Facebook page and at issaquahhighlands.com. So thanks, Dru. I look forward to seeing you around the hood.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.